In Australia, when political parties lose elections, it's a part of the process that you will start a review, look at what your party did wrong, and if necessary, orchestrate a complete rebuild of the party from a policy perspective. And normally, parties do that well. But Australia's Conservative coalition seems to be proving for the second defeat in a row that they have no idea what they're doing. Now, after the previous election in 2022, the Liberal Party, the largest right leaning party in Australia, desperately needed a period of review and analysis because it had basically been wiped out in metropolitan areas and it desperately needed to understand where things had gone wrong. Now, the review after the 2022 election and most public analysis that we have seen pretty much from everyone was this big agreement that there were three groups that the coalition was losing and losing in a very bad way. That is, people that live in cities, women, and voters born after 1980. Which, if we're being honest, most Australians are probably one of those three groups. Now, after 2022, the Liberal Party quite noticeably didn't really do anything to try and fix its problems with those three groups, because since it had suffered so much in cities, its more rural, more conservative members made up a larger portion of its representation in Parliament and had relatively unchecked power. So the Liberal Party was disproportionately right-wing, more so than at most other points in its history, and the right being in charge of the party and the coalition pretty much decided they weren't going to try and fix any of those issues and pretty much just hope for the best. And if you've paid any attention to anything that I've posted, or really any Australian media, you will know that, well, the results of this election, the one that was held on Saturday, saw the coalition come up pretty short, and by pretty short I mean they suffered their worst result in 80 years. The 2022 Australian election was a historic rebuke of the coalition. And the coalition took all the lessons from that, completely ignored them, and then took a historically bad result and then outdid it with the worst result that they have ever suffered in the history of modern politics. And what's really fascinating is that based on how they seem to be positioning themselves post-election, it's possible they might do the same thing again. I would say that since results have really started settling and we have a clear picture for where the parliament is actually heading and what the seat distribution is going to look like, that certain cracks have begun to form in the coalition itself. And by that I mean that tensions are kind of getting up there between the National Party, which represents rural conservatives, and the Liberal Party itself. There seems to be a bit of concern that the coalition as it currently exists might be under quite a bit of pressure. One of the issues that I see coming up over this next parliament is that the National Party is going to have a bigger say in the coalition than at any point in living memory, if I'm being perfectly honest. The National Party didn't suffer too badly at this election in comparison to the Liberals, who were utterly crippled. And when you look at things now in terms of seats in the lower house, it looks like the Nationals are probably going to have about 40% of all the seats in the coalition, a historic high for them. Which means that the National Party, the more conservative of the two, is going to have a very unusually high amount of sway over coalition policy going ahead. So the more conservative party in the coalition is going to have more say now than ever. And I don't imagine they're going to be particularly excited about the idea of any Liberal suggesting that the coalition try to moderate after this election result. And so that is one area of concern when it comes to what the Liberal Party is going to do going ahead. But even more concerning is that apparently having that level of control isn't enough for the Nationals. It looks like some members of the Nationals, or at least one very prominent one, is now switching sides and is infiltrating the Liberal Party itself. Today, Senator Jacinta Price from the Northern Territory announced that she was defecting from the National Party to the Liberal Party. Now, she's a senator from the Northern Territory, and traditionally, senators from the coalition who were elected in the Northern Territory and their representatives in the House traditionally will sit with the Nationals, with some exceptions there. But Jacinta has flat out said that she is switching to the Liberal Party to help them in their rebuild. Now, Jacinta Price made a name for herself back in 2023 by opposing the Voice referendum. She was instrumental in getting the National Party to stand against it, and that forced the Liberal Party's hand. The Liberal Party had to stand against it, and it was defeated. And she got a massive profile out of it. And I think she does deserve her credit, even though I voted for the Voice. I think it's worth knowing that she was incredibly successful in defeating that referendum effort. Now, Jacinta Price is allegedly aiming for the deputy leader position in the Liberal Party with this move. And if she does achieve that, that will represent a fairly significant shift to the right for the party, which sounds insane because a shift to the right is what we've been accusing the Liberal Party of doing for the last half a decade or so. So to think that they're doubling down on this back-to-back election losing strategy is kind of insane. Now, of course, she hasn't been elected to anything. The leadership and the deputy leadership of the Liberal Party will be confirmed over the next week or so. But I think it's quite fascinating to think that one of the most significant far-right, I think it's fair to call her that, one of the most significant far-right faces in the country is in a position to take over some role of leadership in the Liberal Party this quickly after the far-right candidate of their party was resoundingly rejected by the Australian electorate. A few more things that I think are worth noting. This is setting the Nationals-Liberal relationship on fire at the moment. First of all, I mean, Jacinta defecting like this is pissing off a lot of Nationals. Apparently, they had negotiated to get her a seat in the shadow cabinet anyway as a National, but then she spat in the Nationals' face and defected to the Liberals. So, not exactly friendly terms for them now, considering that the Libs have just stolen a Senate seat from the Nationals. And this is coming at a time when people like Matt Canavan, a National Senator from Queensland, is calling for the National Party to start contesting outer suburban seats to see if they can beat the Liberals at their own game there, because he has so little faith in the Liberal Party as a coalition partner at the moment. And finally, this is just a prediction that I have here. Come back and check this in maybe 3 years or 6 years, however many elections, and check if this was accurate or not. But I think one of the main reasons that Senator Price is doing this is because she genuinely believes that she can become Prime Minister. A core tenet of the coalition agreement between the Nationals and the Liberals is that the leader of the Liberal Party, when in government, is always the Prime Minister. There's really no way for a National to become Prime Minister of Australia unless the Liberal PM dies and then the Deputy PM, a National, is temporarily sworn in for a week or two. But there's no real path to the top job unless you are a Liberal. And I do think that Jacinta thinks that she can in some way get the top job, because she could achieve any role in politics as a National except for Prime Minister of Australia. So my prediction, she is going to run for the lower house at some point in the next election or the election after. I predict it'll be Solomon in the Northern Territory. So please come back and check this in a couple years' time and tell me, did she really pursue trying to become Prime Minister?